Welcome to the Journos. I'm Peter Martin. Gordon Parks and Andrew Smith are with me today. As you can probably hear, I think I could actually probably make a solo album right now, Parksy.
Should I shut all over a wee bit in case I catch it?
Well, exactly. It's a sore throat, for God's sake. Geez, peace. But nevertheless, hopefully you'll persevere with us and hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel. The Journos, as ever, we like to talk about some of the burning issues domestically and slightly further afield as well. Sir Alex Ferguson is on the agenda. Scottish football and the structure of it in this one-horse race. Thomas Tuchel, the best option for England or the most available option. Just a few of the topics we'll be discussing, including, of course, possibly the top 10 or 20 foreign players to have played here on Scottish shores that brought joy to us all, whether you supported their team or not. So get your thinking caps on. Sir Alex Ferguson, it's a story that for me is classic for a sub-editor's headline, but there's layers to it that I don't think the truth has come out yet.
That was entirely my thinking. We haven't heard exactly what is he paid, what is his role, what does it amount to? Is it just a ceremonial role?
Do you know how much he's paid? It's £2 million a year.
Do you know that for a fact?
Yeah.
Right, okay. I'm not going to question you, but for £2 million a year, there may well be 1,000,001 places where he appears where the stature of Manchester United is cemented by his involvement in it. A lot of people will turn around and say, well, wait a minute, is anybody worth £2 million a year? But let's try and justify that by saying we don't operate in that world. No. We don't know what the going rate is for ambassadors who are of his stature. He's top drawer. You can get 3 or 4 levels, and then you can get down to, by the way, we're going to give you 50 quid, turn up and speak to the fans in the hospitality.
I'll go any week you want me.
Yeah.
I'll go any week you want me.
And that's, and you know, so it's very difficult to judge and start throwing out Sir Alex Ferguson's not worth £2 million a year.
But for a sinecure, Peter, £2 million for a sinecure, it's...
Well, this is the point. And the other aspect of it, which I think is not clear, and something which I think Sir Alex himself would have been trying to avoid and very keen to avoid. His life has been, you know, apart from in Scotland with Aberdeen and St Mirren, his life has been immersed in all things Manchester United. So he wants to be there, yeah. But he's already aware that that story has been played out before with Sir Matt Busby.
Yep.
The ghost that haunts the players that come after Fergie's class of 92 and then some.
The difference is, look at Shankly. Shankly hovered around the club, turned up at the training ground, didn't know when to say cheerio. There's an aura that Sir Alex Ferguson continues to bring to the club. When you see him in the director's box, it signifies success in an era of power, proper management. And I think you can question the finance, right? But I think Eric Cantona sums it up perfectly. The man can stay as long as he wants and do whatever he wants at a football club. He's earned the right.
You could do that, yeah. But do you need to be further enriched in such a kind of lavish fashion?
It's Alex Ferguson. He's always known his value.
But that's a different argument, Andrew. That's like a situation where you start to say to yourself, he gave up Manchester United because he felt as if he owed it to Kathy to spend time with her. The tragedy of losing his wife is he's got to occupy himself in other ways, which his boys do commercially. But do you get to a situation where Manchester United say, well, we don't pay you, but we want you to be an ambassador and we want to call on you there's a lot of commitment to it. So I think...
Do we know what the commitments are,
Well,
Peter?
that's the other argument of it, where I think we're slightly in the dark and saying to ourselves, it's not just as cold as Sir Alex Ferguson's been emptied and Manchester United have lost their soul. It's a case of we are debating something where I don't think all the evidence is in front of us.
Yeah, speaking of which, right, knowing the individual, as you've probably known better than I do you think Sir Alex Ferguson's character or nature is going to take that information well?
No.
Right, so we know that it's kind of a given, right?
Right.
That he will have been volatile when told that. His nose would have been out of joint. Yeah. You'll probably find that if you go beneath the surface, there'll be big friction there. Because it's a massive slight on him. And he's a man that likes money.
Well, I mean, listen, everybody everybody in life, and I don't want that to isolate to Sir Alex Ferguson. Alex Ferguson likes money because he knows his worth.
Yeah.
We all like money. Yeah. We all have a level that we operate at, but I don't think it's the driving force of Sir Alex Ferguson's role as ambassador. I mean, he didn't come to the table and suddenly say, right, I'm out of United, let's negotiate and I'll turn up here for this.
Yeah.
Manchester United would clearly have come to him and said, look, long before Jim Radcliffe's in there, we want you to come here. We want you to be in there and to be seen. And his sons will have said, well, there's a value to that. And I get that. And I think you can argue about whether he's worth it or not. For me personally, I tend to veer towards Eric Cantona on the basis of, yes, you should be around the club until the day you don't want to be or you die. The only thing I don't think is good, Andrew, is sometimes, you know, the aura and the opinion of the man and the interaction with players might be viewed elsewhere as detrimental to the progress of the club. I don't know if Sir Alex Ferguson's spoken to players and said, you should be doing it this way. I don't think it's in his nature. I think his nature, knowing him as I do, is, and I am talking, scratching the surface of being in his company, I think he's the type of person that if you ask him for help, he'll give you.
Yeah. I mean, it's we're missing Hugh today, really, aren't we? Like,
yeah, absolutely.
You could have given us chapter and verse on this. I don't think he would stick his nose in where it wasn't wanted. I don't get that impression of him. Like yourself,
Yeah.
I don't get that impression of him. And he would know the history about like Matt Busby and Wilf McGuinness and all that. You know, like the kind of how it really, like, you cast such a huge shadow, but maybe he just cast such a huge shadow by being there, but that's not his fault. It's what you do with the shadow, what happens at clubs. You know, when I was at Celtic, people would say, there was somebody suggested, let's remove any evidence of the Lisbon Lions within the club.
Wow.
Because it's diminishing the people, because they see the players today see that and think, we're pygmies compared to what these guys done, and you almost feel diminished. And so I don't think you should ever be scared to acknowledge your history and celebrate your history. And then when Martin O'Neill came in just after I'd left, and Martin O'Neill says, let's embrace it and say, there's your benchmark. There's where where this club could be, has been, and should be always striving to be. Well, and that's what Alex Ferguson should be at Manchester United, because they can still be what they were under him. Financially, you know, they're still one of the richest clubs. So why are they not hitting the levels that they did under?
You asked about the mechanics of what he actually does, and I know that he does because I've been down at Old Trafford and I've witnessed it. There's a meet and greet exercise before games. There's a corporate element to it. I mean, he's not a young man. These are tiring events, right? These are things that he's prepared to do. I'm sure he enjoys that, right? But so he is present. He is delivering a service to the club as the ambassador. Doing the meet and greet, simple things like that, a big value at a club like you know.
Perhaps can I suggest to you something else? He'll also be a sounding board for people who are not wise about football. For God's sake, he's one of the greatest ever managers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if I was sitting in a situation where suddenly, as a young journalist, I come into contact with Hugh McIlvanney, if I don't ask Hugh McIlvanney how to make myself better, I'm an idiot.
I know.
So Sir Alex Ferguson is not for me an ambassador. Hello, I'm Sir Alex Ferguson. Sir Alex Ferguson for me is, I'm one of the greatest managers ever, and I have so much information in the server that is my mind of operating in football. The problem is, and I think this is, and I don't mean to do it as the pun, because it's the wrong one for Manchester United, but the cop-out is quite simply, Sir Matt Busby won the European Cup, and then eventually the board made countless wrong decisions.
Yes.
The board made it. David Gill complimented Sir Alex Ferguson. They were a team. The board was in harmony. There would be disagreements, and I'm sure the Edwards family would have disagreements with Sir Alex Ferguson. David Gill was that perfect buffer to say, right, we can do this for you, we can do that. We understand where you're coming from, but we think we should do this. And suddenly United backed him. They had Sir Bobby Charlton there, who was not looked upon as somebody who was a pain in the arse.
No.
He was looked upon as, by the way, there's a European Cup winner. Let's suck up all the experience we can get out of him as well.
Yep. But what we don't know, maybe there's another element to it as well, because maybe he said, maybe he's kind of seen Radcliffe for what he is. Maybe we don't know, I'm obviously just speculating, but maybe he said, where do you think you're taking this club? Because he's got these ideas, and he's not exactly been that successful in Nice or whatever, Radcliffe, has he? So maybe he's saying, Sir Jim Radcliffe's, maybe Sir Alex has found him out.
There's 280, give or take, members of staff across the board at Old Trafford. There'll be people that have been loyal servants at that club for a long time, have lost their job. Savage cuts, office staff, people who have been part of the brickwork during Sir Alex's time. How does that sit with him either?
Exactly. So maybe he's called them out. Maybe he's called them out for the right reasons.
But he's only part of what we do know is he's part of a larger cost-cutting exercise.
Yes.
That Jim Radcliffe is going through with the board, and whatever their strategy is, he has, for me, made a PR mistake. When
disaster.
Disaster, yeah. Because when you're trying to control the narrative, to get people on side, to get the fans on side, to buy a manager time, or to get a new manager in, the last thing you want to do is to put the legend out the door that everybody loves.
It seemed unnecessary. I'm not saying that he merited the 2 million or this can't happen, but where Manchester United are and where Sir Alex is, it seems completely unnecessary.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, I have witnessed at many clubs, boards who come into the club who lose a sense of the history. Yeah. I could recite to you so many other clubs where players, great managers have been discarded and they move on. And as you say, the ghosts of successes past, they try and get rid of them. But the best way to do that is by making your own history, putting your own good team on the park.
I get sent to Glasgow Caledonian University. Alex Ferguson was opening up a wing, and it was a children's element to it, right? And I get sent, I'm in touch with his PA, I got a 1-to-1, I had to wait an hour and a half. Eventually the PA said you can get 2 minutes with Sir Alex. Robbie Keane had signed for Celtic that morning.
Right.
So I went, Sir Alex, thanks for giving me the time. My first question is, Robbie Keane's just signed for Celtic, you know him well. How much of an impact will that have in the championship race? He looked at me and went, I'm not answering that, stupid.
Yes.
That was me. Right? I mean, that's Sir Alex Ferguson for you.
Well, can I tell you, Parsley, don't worry about getting the left hook. I was the journalist at the Celtic Manchester United game.
Oh, yeah.
And we all waltzed in after the game. Nakamura's hit the goal. They've won 1-0. Manchester United have battered Celtic that night. So eventually I walked in and we sat down and I said, Sir Alex, are you angry with your players for dominating a match so much and you end up losing? What kind of stupid question's that? Now, there is a great thing in journalism, right? Because the great thing about our hypocritical fraternity, sorority, call it what you will, the great thing about it is when somebody's getting battered, everybody just moves.
I know, I've seen that.
So I am sitting...
Don't know the man, never seen him before.
Exactly. Or the other one is the classic one, which a few older journalists used to do. They used to go, look at that, Dick, can you believe this?
Yeah.
But the one thing about it, me and my usual obnoxious self, I went back in and I said, no, hold on a minute. You've dominated this game and your players have squandered countless opportunities and Celtic have won 1-0. You know what Nakamura can do. Are you angry with your players? I just went back in at him again.
And how was it the second time?
Well, he realised that the question wasn't stupid. What he does is, there are certain areas, I get him on, he doesn't want to comment on certain other clubs or players, but sometimes if you are talking about something that he doesn't want to give you the headline on, he'll brush it away. He'll try and maybe ridicule you or boot you out into left field or isolate you. And then if you are weak, you don't go back in. To his credit, he came back in and said, bang. Now, fast forward 20 years, Gary Neville does his overlap podcast and said, my God, he fucking went through us. He absolutely slaughtered us. He was raging.
Beep.
Yeah, exactly. No, he did, but that was his language. That's the industrial football language, as you know, because Gary Neville said he was raging. Nakamura's done it at Old Trafford 2 weeks prior to it. Next minute, boom, same again. Van der Sar's beaten, and he said he was raging. So at that point, didn't help me 20 years on, but I thought to myself, I knew he was going to be angry. And by the way, you know, those little moments that you're talking about are the comedy gold, because, see, to be honest with you, and I'm not being dismissive of your qualities, Parsley, but 10 times better journalists than you or I have been booted out into left field by
we're in the company of greatness, right? One of the biggest miscarriages of justice was famously Gary Caldwell's winner against France at Hampden.
Oh, yes.
And I was in the mix zone with you.
Right.
If you want to continue this conversation, H.
He hasn't got a clue.
Thierry Henry.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember?
I kind of remember now. It was very frosty, wasn't it?
And he took you to the side,
That's right.
disrespecting him. And he said, we'll see you in Paris.
Was that you that got that line?
Yeah,
He asked to speak to you and to complete. He's had the goodness to come out and speak, and he's taken offence to the question that you've asked.
It wasn't. And
took you to the
the
side.
question was fine, mind you, but the question asked was fine. If
And I was doing
remember
that.
Andrew Smith, who does he work with? Listen, we've all had it. And by the way, if you were on his beat when he was the Aberdeen manager, you have that opinion. Sometimes you could be out in the cold for years.
Thank go further.
Well,
a boxer.
Yeah, and the other one that I couldn't believe it, when I was asked to attend more than a few Champions League press conferences out with Scottish football, I can't remember who I was working for, but I would go down to do Manchester United's press conferences. And boy, the Custis brothers, they couldn't give two hoots about Fergie. They leathered him. It was like a tag team.
Right.
You know, he'd come in and Fergie was up for them. And they would be so disrespectful. And I was sitting there thinking to myself, these guys are going to get battered. I mean, there's just no respect for him. And they'd slaughter him. And then Fergie, being Fergie, bang, he'd go back at them. And he'd go, you've been barred before, son, you'll be barred again. Just keep going the way you're going. And I thought to myself, but the Custis brothers, they were in there. They were just there for the fight. And I always was amazed. I thought to myself, you know, I wonder about his experience of dealing with journalists up here and then dealing with some of the Vipers down south as well.
Well, we used to go down to Carrington. It was 9 o'clock in the morning. He had his press conference. So Celtic and Rangers both met Manchester United in the Champions League across the last 20 years or so.
Yeah.
So every time we rocked up, all the English guys would say, oh, "Great to have yous," because he's always on his best behaviour. A few guys come down from Scotland, and he'd come in and he'd go, proper journalist, you know, like, how you doing, lads, and all that kind of stuff, you know, and you would go in wax a bit, kind of old style Scottish football, you know, so it would be like him kind of reliving his memories and all that. You never really get any great lines, but there was some good stuff. I remember him famously, he was talking about, I think the time he was coming up to Celtic Park, it was the first time he'd up since Paul McStay's testimonial.
Yeah.
And if you remember that night, it was the fog.
Yes, that's right.
And they wore these grey strips. Remember, they wore these, Manchester wore these grey strips. And he's gone, do you remember that night? Fucking stupid idea. Grey strips in the fog. Grey strips in the fog.
I know. And amazingly, they wore them in the sun against Southampton and still get pumped.
Oh, that's right. 'Cause I think they canned them after that, didn't they?
Yeah, absolutely. But the funny thing is, we don't know if there are still little snippets that will come out in the wash in this story. I've been in his company a good 2 or 3 times on a one-to-one, sitting next to him, and even sitting next to him in a social sense, which is fantastic. I was sitting one day and he was there and Dalglish was there. So if you want to have an opinion, get ready for getting battered. And I mentioned to him about the old days of a Scottish player who shall remain nameless. And I said, we need a this type of player. And he went, what? He's hopeless. He was hopeless then. And honestly, I just could see me shrinking in the chair. And then if I was looking for any kind of backup, the last person you want on your right side is Dalglish, because he'd easily laugh and cane you as well. But I'm of the opinion, like, Cantona.
He's got a magnificent aura. He's
Yeah.
got
Where are they now? There's nobody to hold a candle to that kind of personality.
I worked with Billy McNeill when it was really difficult times, like the end of his Celtic career, his Celtic management career, second time around. And he never even, just walking into a room, he never lost that aura and you never lost that respect for them.
No,
and
absolutely.
again, you could get caned. You could get caned by them if you say the wrong thing at the wrong time. But they had that aura. Although the one I would say, you just mentioned him, I never ever felt that about Kenny. The same kind of aura.
Ronnie Mackay, God rest his soul, went from Falkirk in the Premier League and Yogi was the player manager. And Ronnie had this question loaded. And after the game, we sat in the front and Ronnie put his hand up and says, John, put his question out, and Yogi just looked at him and went, Ronnie, not today, son. And I thought, that's something, you know what I mean? It's you need to, right, but it was funny.
It's like Walter when he gave an address to all of you as the State of the Nation, and there was about 400 lines in it, and then one journalist said, "And is Rickson fit?" It was something as Kirk Broadfoot's injury clearing up, and he just stopped, turned around, and went, "Really?" Do you know what I mean? It was just that. Great managers can give you. I don't mind that. I love that.
Oh, same, I agree.
Walter was a more a quiet assassin that way.
He did the eyes, didn't he?
He did. Just the look. He didn't need to actually like belittle you with kind of industrial language and all that.
Yeah.
By and large, it was more like, you know, withering. He did withering as well as anybody.
I also liked. I don't mind it. I don't think in our game you can be, sensitive to it all. I fought cat and dog with Martin O'Neill. I mean, he absolutely. I would probably go as far as to say hate's too strong a word, but I'll say he hated me. He walked into a press conference, he'd look and he'd think, right, here we go, let's get ready for a fight. And David Prover and I loved fighting with him, but it was a joy because he'd his job to do and I had mine, and my job, obviously, I often say to people, do you remember that time when you told your players to go out and not play to the top of their game? And he go, no. And I went, well, why do you want me to take my foot off the gas when I'm a journalist? Yeah. So I don't mind. I loved Fergie at his best, battering people. I didn't see him in the early years at Aberdeen. Certainly witnessed some really great bits of classic Fergie in the press conference in the United years. And, you talk about Walter, you talk about Martin O'Neill. There are great managers that you think, this is a great ding-dong. I don't mind if he gives me a kicking.
Yeah. See, Kenny was the worst. I mean, when Kenny did those press conferences in Beards.
Horrendous.
And it was awful. And I remember standing behind him, and they just won the League Cup. So I was standing, and Celtic were playing Rangers. I think that was the game they lost 4-0, actually.
Yeah.
So you're standing behind him because he's in this wee chair in the middle of Beards, and it's a tiny wee pub, so you just have to stand behind. So you'd ask him a question. He wouldn't look round to you, right? He would just answer the question. And I said, Celtic hadn't beat Rangers in 10 games. Yeah. I said, do you think there's a mental issue, Kenny? What? Mental as in stupid? And he never looked round at me, right? And I went, I don't mean that. I don't mean that. I said, it's mental as in psychological. Right. And I said, and I know you've won the League Cup, but he kept going on about, I've won a cup here. I said, but the League Cup's not a barometer of what you would, of Celtic success.
Yeah.
I know you don't think it's a barometer. He put about 5 more stressed syllables in it than barometer I had. He absolutely mullered me that day.
Yeah. See the barometer of a good journalist, and you're right, there are great journalists, right?
Yeah.
Especially, one of them was Derek McGregor, right? Derek McGregor at the Sun. We went to Hibs on a Wednesday night. Pat Fenlon was under fire. Real journalists come to the fore when the question has to be asked.
Yeah.
Are you going to resign? They get hammered.
Yes.
Aberdeen beat them, I think. Took about three or four off them. And in the press room after it, there's a big windows. And Derek McGregor's first question was, Pat, the fans are at the front door calling for your head. Are you going to resign? That takes a bit, right, to ask that question, right?
Yeah.
Pat Fenlon, totally offended by it, and says, I can't hear any fans calling for my head. And Derek McGregor leaned over the window and says, can you hear them now, Pat?
which is a good noise. And by the way, I'll finish on this line before we move on, which is quite simply, you know, Tam Burns and I were great pals. Yeah. I mean, you were just, and you almost have to draw that line. And Tam would have had to have drawn the line when he was player manager at Kilmarnock, and then eventually he decides to hang up the boots and become the manager. His relationship with the players changes. And equally so, because he was my friend, Celtic couldn't beat Rangers. And Tam was dominating games.
Oh, yeah.
They were dominating him, and Rangers got up the park and win it. And I said to him, Tam, is it time you reassess the tactics in the game against Rangers, because you've lost 8 consecutive games by dominating a game and they go and pick you off? Is it time to change your tactics? And I'll never forget. You talking about Walter, the cold stare. Tactics? What do you know about tactics? Right? And at that point, that was, you know, it was like the first punch from Ali, and I knew the other 3 were coming in quicker than I could see it. And he just battered me. And at the end of it, he'd come up later and, we'd chat about it, and he'd laugh his head off. And he said, listen, do you not think I was looking for a way to somehow stop Laudrup and Gascoigne, in games where they were absolutely, Tommy Burns' side at times dominated Rangers in a game,
really
and then boom, up they would go, Rangers soak it all up, and Gorham would make a great save, then they'd burst up the park, bang, Laudrup runs away, Brian O'Neill falls in his arse, bang, the ball's in the back of the net, game over.
I know.
So, no, it was, listen, I love managers. I'm in the Fergie camp, but I still think there are elements of this story that we are not aware of and that are still to come out. But I do think it's a massive, massive disaster to suddenly,
It's a PR disaster.
Yes, it is. It's a disaster.
And it's so unnecessary at this point when he's trying to curry favour, Radcliffe.
Yeah. And of course, now, we are in a situation where in Fergie's day up here in Scotland, he had the ability to change the axis of power. And yet this weekend, we're all putting on fake excitement of some kind of contest between Celtic and Aberdeen, with Aberdeen on 13 consecutive wins. I know Don's fans, absolutely get raging with this kind of West Coast attitude to it, but it's not a contest in my book. It's merely something interesting early on in the season, which has suddenly whetted our appetite, because we are now operating in, if last season was terrible for the football, this season we're operating in a league which is a one-horse race.
It's window dressing, I suppose.
Yeah.
And we take any kind of window dressing we can. And you have to say, I don't think it's ever happened before that both Celtic and Aberdeen have been on level points at the 6-game mark of the both of them 100% records. So it's a wee bit different. It's an ephemeral pleasure or whatever. It's just it does add a wee bit of spice, and we need as much little spice added as possible.
Yeah, I'm all for us talking up the game, Parsley.
Mm-hmm. I'd be really keen to find out how he approaches it, because this is a statement moment. If he can go there and have a go, and if I'm looking at the Celtic defence, I want to go there and puncture them, have a real kind of philosophy going into the game that they can get at them. And I think he's got a real question to answer here. How's he going to set his team up?
Would you have a go?
Well, listen, it's a phony war, right? Because we know how the whole thing ends. But you're right. There's a curiosity here more than anything else.
Yeah.
Would I have a go? I think with this current Celtic defence, now's the time. What have they got? Listen, if he could go there and stink the place out and try and get a point, it's not the right statement. He has to go there and get the mentality engaged, feed off everything that's the momentum that you've got. What opportunity you've got here? You've got the armoury to go there and have a bit of a go.
I agree. Yeah. And I think we all said at the time, it's Rodgers' fault because he changed too many players. But see Falkirk having a go and see how close they ran Celtic for 70 minutes. that was less to do with the personnel of Celtic, but the fact that Celtic get freaked out by anybody having a go at them because it happens so infrequently, as we saw with Dortmund.
Yeah.
If you go toe-to-toe with Celtic, that's your best chance. Yeah. You're not going to, you shouldn't be sitting back.
But is there a greater disparity between what
Falkirk
Celtic? I mean, Falkirk's the perfect reason for me to flip this on its head and say, well, if John McGlynn's side, which are not as good as Aberdeen, can go and dominate and have a go for periods. They didn't dominate for everything. Celtic eventually went through the gears, but they had a moment where they were 2-1 up in that match.
Yes.
So if he can do it with lesser players than what Aberdeen have at their disposal, then fine. But a lot of Celtic fans would jump all over my head and say, wait a minute, you've slaughtered him for going toe-to-toe with Dortmund and getting absolutely battered. And now you want Aberdeen to go toe-to-toe. What's the bigger disparity? Borussia Dortmund to Celtic or Celtic to Aberdeen? I give you the bigger disparity is Celtic to Aberdeen.
It is. It is. I think if you look at it, the financial differentials are greater between Celtic and Aberdeen than they are. It's something like, is it 1-5 and Celtic something like 1-3 or 1-4 with Dortmund. It's of that nature. So they're kind of similar. But I didn't have a go at Rodgers for his tactics. Ergo, I'm with Parksy in saying this is what Thelin should do. He should have a go on Saturday.
We'll discover it.
Oh, wait a minute. Don't let him away with that. Bloody hell, what are you doing? Why didn't you have a go? Why didn't you have a go at Brendan Rodgers for his tactics against Dortmund?
Because they were losing anyway.
Yeah, but you wanted them to go toe-to-toe with it. And by the way...
I don't think they went toe-to-toe. I think they played badly.
No, but
I just think they played badly.
No, but you say, to say they played badly and have an off night, it's a similar tactic in previous European games that he wants them to play a specific way and they're not good enough to do it. And if you keep making the same mistake consistently...
But they're not good enough anyway. So you're losing nothing. Right.
Celtic, the Celtic fans, Andrew...
Celtic have played 40...
Are you telling me Celtic fans want to pay to go to Germany and see their side getting battered 7-1?
So if they see them losing 3-1, is that a great trip?
What was a way to try and win it, though?
What was Celtic's biggest failing that night? They get hit with pace.
Yes.
They get savaged with pace.
So, yeah.
If I'm watching that game, right, I take hope from that. Falkirk had who was the boy that stretched him down the right constantly, right?
Oh, yeah.
Now, if he plays Duke, Aberdeen have got the players there potentially that can go and panic Celtic because it's a defence capable of panicking, as you saw against Dortmund. Now, you're right, the disparity's massive.
Yeah.
But if you go and hit them with pace, that Celtic defence is vulnerable. Then you've got a starting point.
Yes.
Well, it'll be interesting to see what he does. I'm kind of I can see myself getting done in here for this one, but they're head to head. I think he'll come in and try and keep it tight.
Right.
I think he'll try and stifle the game. Yes, press, but I think he'll try and stifle the game and look for that one moment of a set piece. This is me guessing, by the way. I think he'll look and say, can I orchestrate, having watched Celtic and we've done all the tactics, can I orchestrate a way to stop them getting into their flow and we can steal a point? If he comes out of Celtic Park with a point, people are going to go, Jimmy.
Yes.
The whole play, Aberdeen's going to go mental. Yeah. I think they'll have an open top bus for the tactics for the game. But by the same token, if he, let's just say, came away from Celtic Park with a point, he's got Dundee United and then he's got Rangers at Pittodrie. Yeah. What a chance to really put the cat among the pigeons. But what I would do is I would stifle the game and I'd pick a fight and I'd break the game up at every opportunity to take them out of their stride. Because see, once Celtic start the triangles and the passes and it's relentless, you're goosed. You're absolutely goosed. And then what happens? If it's still 0-0 in 75 minutes, Brendan brings on the 4 guys that can change the game and they win 1-0. Yeah. So if they go toe-to-toe and say, I think we can take you on, it's a 7-0. Because the only
disagree with you.
Because the player that they've got,
really that's the fact. That's a real pragmatic, and probably the right thing to do.
Yeah,
you're right. He goes and he preserves this phony war for another month or so.
But does it know then up the old Ebby Scovedale? Remember he lost 2-0 after they'd been losing 7 and 6 and 5, and his famous line, he said the operation was a success but the patient died on the table.
Yes. Well, absolutely.
I mean,
that's a great line.
is a 2-0 defeat, is that great for Aberdeen?
I'll tell you what it is though. It's a chance to say we live to fight another day, where we can have that odd battle that we win in our own backyard. It's very difficult to win in Celtic's backyard now. It's very difficult domestically to go there and win a game, because the disparity is such that he can bring on players consistently, 5 changes that changes the outcome of a game. I understand where you're coming from, but you ask players psychologically, 7, 8, 9-0, flattened, going into the next game thinking, we thought we were good, but we've just been absolutely done in by Celtic. But a 2-0 there's a wee bit of hope there, lads.
And that's a caveat, actually. Aberdeen have been terrific. They've given us a story.
Yes.
But they've not been great.
No, they shouldn't. They had 3, what XG told us, 3 good chances they had against Hearts, and they won 3-2. XG also told us that Dundee should have beaten them. So they should have. Their form has been kind of gets fraying. It's been fraying, but they've been able to kind of get away with it.
A bit of luck. It camouflages an awful lot. We'll find. Listen, I hear the word the acid test. The phrase, "This is the acid test," and I'm really curious to see how we will approach it.
A former colleague said the other week, the ultimate acid test.
Yes. Listen, I don't mind that. I think we should promote Scottish football. I think we should build it up. I hope Aberdeen make a game of it. I have. Obviously, from my own point of view, I look at it and say, Celtic will win. I can't even see a draw for Aberdeen. No. But I think if he comes out of it without an absolute doing, then I think he'll say, okay, it was tough to do it, but we've still got to play them at Pittodrie, and we'll be better, and we'll have another transfer window.
Come on again, isn't it? We'll see you at Christmas.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we're not back to that again.
Well, listen, shut up. It makes headlines, you know. Just out of curiosity on that point, I mean, of the two teams, we don't want to be dismissive of what Aberdeen have to offer in this game, because Jimmy Thelin deserves praise for where he's got them so far. Whether we think the calibre of opposition has been as good as it should be, he's still managed to get the wins.
I spoke to Alan Burrows and I spoke to some of the media department up in Aberdeen, and they said Derek McInnes brought something to the table. He carried a presence as well, and he led, right? Yes. He said one of the most impressive things about the new manager is his conduct with people. He brings a presence to the place, like organisation, and he's credible.
He does it with a calm assurance.
Credible.
Yeah, there's a real calm assurance.
Players buying it that quickly because they want to be led, right? Yeah. And he's good at that. Now, again, we'll find out just how credible they are as a football team, really. But you've got to give him massive credit because he's done it quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. 2 quick points before we finish. Got to ask you about the England manager. Apart from what I call thinly veiled racism, I
concur with that.
Yeah, he is a German of a good pedigree who has landed the England job. Now, my point on this is he the missing link for England? Because I heard and I read Gary Lineker saying England have an elite manager, and I said, yes, but they don't have the best elite manager.
No, but I mean, they have the elite manager who outfoxed the best elite manager in the Champions League final.
Yes, absolutely. So my point to you is,
you're referring to
Pep Guardiola.
Aye.
Do you think he is the difference between Southgate's nearly?
Yes, I think he could be.
Yeah,
I genuinely think he could be. I think you can't look at that group of that current crop of England players and not think that this is a crop of players that could take a major championship.
Bear with me here.
I agree with you on that, but I'm not sure it's him.
Peter, when I walked into the studio this morning, I thought you had invited the new England manager.
Yes, he does have that kind of a look about him,
doesn't he?
Yeah.
I wish I had his hair.
Without the substance.
See if you had the hair.
Yeah.
Definitely there.
Without the substance of the trophies.
Because he's a bit skeletal, isn't he? And I've lost a bit of weight.
You do look awful like him, mate, to be honest.
But to be fair,
wish I had his money.
Back to
Alex
by the way,
Ferguson.
you two are obsessed. Is he the missing link?
Again, I like, and it's a terrible thing to say, but just me, I like my manager to be a national for the team that he's representing. I think an England manager should be English. I know that's kind of...
No.
It's just my opinion. Is he a fantastic manager? Fantastic manager. And he also brings energy. Again, we're talking about players responding.
Yes.
There's somebody that will absolutely bark out an instruction and demand things, right? I don't think England have had that for a while. And I think he's
animated.
He is.
He's animated, and that's...
I want my manager on the touchline not crouching down in his hunkers, right, with his hands in his face. I want him telling me, demanding, and that's what he does.
Well, I'm going to say something won't be viewed as controversial. My opinion of it is he's not the man. I don't think he's the difference between them getting to a final and then eventually winning it. What I would say is this: had they somehow been able to orchestrate the train stopping at the perfect time and they managed to get Pep Guardiola, I think for the next 5-6 years, England would have had a serious tilt at winning the World Cup and the European Championships.
Peter,
I think they would have won both of them because he is the ultimate manager in having a collection of talented players and saying, this is how I want you to play. This is what we're going to do.
Because he reinforces it on the training ground, day in, day out, week in, week out. You don't have that time.
No, you don't.
At a national level.
No, you may well not.
You can't craft a team the way that Guardiola will craft his Manchester City teams.
Which makes
or his
Tuchel a
Barcelona
better
teams.
option because...
I don't agree with that.
Right.
I don't agree with that, Andrew. Football's football. I want you to play this way. When you come here, I'm going to pick this system. This is the system you play.
With 3 training
He
sessions.
instills method over time. Tuchel is a passionate. He's got more passion than Pep.
I think that's what you need.
What you need to do is inspire.
Yeah,
right?
you need that charisma.
Because they're all fantastic players, right? Pep's method takes... He's a day-to-day... I totally agree. Listen, brilliant managers, but Tuchel brings something different.
Yeah, it's a kind of pizzazz. It's a kind of an oomph.
Yeah.
Well,
And an oomph.
Yeah. in my mind, I think, and I bow to your opinion on the basis that you're perfectly
Entitled to.
Yeah, entitled to have
be
that.
wrong.
No, to have that opinion. Just as much as I look at it, and I don't agree. I just don't agree with your basis of this is the way that I want you to play, and that can't be implemented. I think even Pep taking the previous squad that Southgate had, he'd definitely have taken Grealish. That's a stonewall certainty. But he would have had them drilled in the way he wanted them to play. And remember, at a major tournament as well,
You do get
because
a bit more time.
you've got more time to build up with your team and say, by the way, I don't need you guys. I'm not going to tell you how to play football. I'm going to tell you how to play my system, and that's the way we're going to play, and we're going to play that relentlessly. Do not deviate from it. If you deviate from it, you'll get hooked. So I think the nature of the way his team go about football, and by the way, it's not all tiki-taka, because Man City have been prone to launching it now with the big man up front. So I think it would be ideal. I'm not convinced of Tuchel. I remain to be convinced because, as Andrew says, what a squad they have. They should be winning.
John Brown tells a brilliant story about when he signed for Rangers and he went into the dressing room for the first game and he's nervous wreck about to go out and play at Ibrox. And he said, Gaffer, what do you want me to do? And Graham Souness says, listen, John, if I've got to tell you what you need to do, you're at the wrong football club. And that's right. If you've got good players at a good environment, England have got the best. England have got world stars. What you need to do is go and inspire them. That's it.
Yeah, I don't think it's as simple as that now. I think the game needs a system. The whole thing.
Tuchel can play systems.
Well,
He's a tactical
and this is
fanatic.
what we're about to find out, Andrew. Yeah. I'm not saying he's a dud. I'm saying he's a certain type of manager that he has his way of playing, and I don't think it's the missing link. It's just an opinion. I think if they'd waited for the best manager that England crave to get them the trophies, suddenly if everybody sees Pep Guardiola walking in, they buy into the big thing. Thomas Tuchel has walked in and surprised many by being announced as England manager. Yes. And then, of course, you've got what I call the really, really small-minded Union Jack wavers who share a little bit of yours that should be an England manager.
No, listen, I'm a purist. I just want. Listen,
that's a lot of bollocks.
You get people making. There's people working in our industry aren't even Scottish, and go and comment us and all that kind of thing, right?
When you were in the Daily Record, did you demand a Scottish editor?
No, right. But here's the thing.
You know,
your country's your country.
But it's a national.
Country.
I mean, I wouldn't mind if that was the system across the board, that the manager, like the players, has to have some kind of bloodline or some kind of naturalised kind of basis for being the manager of that country. Italians don't pick anybody but Italians to be the Italy national manager.
Well,
Germans, I don't think, pick anybody but Germans.
No luck, the Italians haven't won anything in decades.
The Italians have got 4 World Cups and 2 European Championships.
From a long, long time ago.
2006.
We're in 2024.
It's only every 4 years.
But I don't think the Italians are the light, the way, and the truth on this.
By the way, the Italians won the Euros.
I don't think it's a
4 years ago.
I don't think it's a
3 years
definitive.
ago.
I don't think it's a definitive. You need to have someone from that country.
No, I'm just saying certain countries do it that way, but I would quite like it if that was part of the international environment.
Yeah, as a rule.
As a rule.
Right.
As a rule.
It's a different argument.
That's my point exactly. I would love that rule to be. Listen, I cover Scotland's rugby. I seldom hear a Scottish accent. I find it hard to buy into Scotland's rugby team because they're all natural. They're all getting brought in.
They've bought a tin of shortbread once, and then you can get
naturalised. It's a Jack Charlton, isn't it?
It dilutes it and it's fake.
Yes.
Right? When Bertie Volks came and spoke about our boys, he's not telling the truth. Right?
Yeah.
He's getting paid.
But with all due respect, what are you looking for? Sporting integrity in a sport that has no integrity? I mean, give us peace.
Steve, I'm happy to fly that flag.
The whole thing is a business.
I just
nowadays.
mean, across the board, that's what it should be. But I'm not going to kind of sneer about any country.
No, I get it.
As a
Listen, I was
non-national
surprised, but I'm
manager.
happy with it. England have got a good manager there, right?
Yeah.
I've not got a problem with it on that.
Yeah.
My preference, like the rugby team, get Scots and English to represent their nation.
Yeah.
Yes.
Both in playing and coaching.
Okay.
I agree with that.
I also look at the Scotland bench, by the way, and I see Chris Woods and I see John Carver. It doesn't upset me, but I wonder, is it really right? They played against Scotland. Chris Woods was a goalkeeper. We've got good coaches in Scotland.
Yeah.
It doesn't really sit great with me, to be honest.
I think football is football. It's like anything else in life. If you can provide a service in an industry and you know what you're doing, you go and you
Why
get
do
a
we have
job.
national teams then?
It's true. I
Yeah,
don't get it.
I think that's a. I think. Listen.
Maybe we should get rid of the whole
I think it's a different argument. But
international
it's,
football.
But it's moved on that
Totally
much
true.
now. It's moved on. You had a situation.
what is it then?
Well, we joked about Jack Charlton. Tony Cascarino wasn't even Irish.
I know.
So let's put things in perspective here. I think Di Stefano ended up playing for two different countries. Puskas, you know what I mean? It's
Flags of convenience, but there seems to be more convenience now than.
Rose Riley won the World Cup apparently with Italy.
yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So
Anyway.
So at the end of the day, listen, I don't agree with your argument, but that's the joy of this programme. I miss Hugh because he usually just bludgeons me to death. But over and above that, just before we go, and on that point of, well, let's keep everything, the same nationality. I was looking at the loss of Fabian Caballero the other week there, and I thought to myself, how lucky are we to be enriched by foreign players coming to our shores and showing us maybe things that we long for, that we used to be able to do, that we had in abundance in the 60s and the 70s, and to an extent in the 80s, going back to Sir Alex, technically gifted players. And I was looking at some of the players that have come here and made an impression. Caballero did, Kanigia, obviously, as well as Georgian Mzadze. One of the names that threw up was Dieter van Turnholt. Do you remember him?
Oh yes, he scored for Kilmarnock's winner.
Yeah,
in the League Cup final.
Didn't exactly set Scottish football alight, but
he's
etched his
left
name
an
in history.
impression.
Yeah.
Yeah. He has a place in folklore, Kilmarnock folklore.
Hans Heelhuis.
Hans Heelhuis, I was thinking.
Van Cosma.
He's Van Cosma was my next one. I was thinking.
And who was the guy that played him in the part for Kilmarnock?
That's what that was.
Eremenko. Yeah.
Fabulous.
You know what, Patsy? He is the one player that I could say that you and I have built our entire game around complete lack of movement.
Oh, yes.
But the ability to pick the odd pass.
Like that. You finished it well there.
He needed a golf buggy to come on if he was wanting to move for like 5 yards.
It was a joy to watch that.
He was incredible. His passing range.
Stefan Adam.
Oh, yeah.
Rudy Scatchell.
Yeah, absolutely.
Soze.
Yeah.
You know, great players. And I'm glad you mentioned Heelhouse. Amaruso. For a generation further back, there was a guy who played for Rangers, Johnny Hubbard.
I knew the name.
South African. Who scored goals and could beat men and provide a wee bit of flair. And a guy I loved in a sense of an interview, it was George Alberts, because at least George would face up for an interview.
Oh, he would.
He said about that the better, I would say.
Is that right?
He's not in talking terms with me, sadly.
Well, there's not that many to be fair. I think me and 2 other guys I know are still your pals. Despite everything.
Have you get Robert Pritz down?
No, Robert Pritz was a great player. Robert Pritz actually. Do you know what Robert Pritz reminded me of? And we'll finish on this, Andrew. Robert Pritz is part of a group of players, and I include Jerry McCabe in this.
Yes.
They're a group of players who not only loved football and played at the highest level, but if you chapped their door and said, you fancy getting up the park for a game of 22 aside, he'd be up there and he'd say, who's up there? And I'd go, well, Tam Burns is up there, Pritzy's up there, Jerry McCabe's up there. You know, those type of players that loved it and didn't want the game to end for them.
During when we used to have, I know we've not got one this year, but during the winter breaks, we had an editor who would send us along to cover junior games. So I went along to see Pollock one day, Robert Pritz. He was 42 at the time. And he's enthusiastic, as you say, the enthusiasm, I got him after it. And it was just a life-affirming 5 minutes. I said, why, how can you play at this level after everything that you've experienced here? And it was just, as you say, because I love football.
Have you heard of
the
a player
joy?
called Stevie Snowy Morrison? Ex-Aberdeen Dunfermline.
Right.
Do you know Snowy?
No.
You must know, big, elegant Dunfermline midfielder, blonde hair.
Right, okay.
He's still playing amateur football in his 60s.
Yeah.
He's 60s.
Some people just can't put the ball away and it's great.
Brilliant. Luke Nyholt.
Luke Nyholt.
Luke Nyholt.
Yeah.
That was a good name.
That's a good one, isn't it? And for Aberdeen fans who, look for those little bits, one of them was Hisham Zero Ali. Do you remember him?
I do.
He killed in a car crash, didn't he?
He did.
Yeah, some people think, that a little bit of the other one that I
Moroccan,
think... Yeah, the other one that most Aberdeen fans of a certain vintage will know, and I thought he was straight out of a... Don't tell me. Straight out of a Flash Gordon movie.
Phelan van der Ark.
No, it was Zoltan Varga.
Zoltan Varga. Yeah.
So there's a name, isn't it?
Zoltan Varga.
Who I think was the guy who was flying the plane
for Ming the Merciless.
Ming the Merciless, But anyway, Zoltan Varga was one of those players of a certain generation. Of course, the other one...
Who was the mad guys they bought, the Bulgarians they bought? And we thought, like...
Well, do you know what? Paul Hegarty tells a great story about him.
He was a wee barra.
Red hair.
Red hair.
Paul Hegarty walked down the corridor as manager, and he walked past him and he said, I see 2 managers off. I think you will be the third. And I thought, wow, I can't remember his name. We can't go off without thinking about this boy. What was his name? Surely to God you can remember.
He played well in the 1994, I think, was it 1994 Bulgarian?
Yes, and he was a little midfielder. Kyriakov.
Brilliant.
He was like a Tasmanian devil.
Yes,
wasn't he?
Absolutely. But again, what a line walking down the corridor at Bedard. I see 2 off and I think you're the third. At that point, you would have had to grab me off his throat. But anyway.
Alex McLeish said that about me, and it never worked out for him. If you're back to where we started.
Honestly, you've given us a line just at the end of the programme where we have to finish. I hope you enjoyed some of those names that we threw out there. Certainly worthy of a programme on its own. We talked about Alex Ferguson. We've talked about Celtic Aberdeen, England managers. Give us your thoughts in the comments section below in the Journos. Hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel. Thoroughly enjoyed. Gordon Parks, Andrew Smith, and from myself, Peter Martin, thank you for listening and watching.